Global Summit. We are very excited today. We will focus today on community leadership. And we're going to start the day off with Candramauli Swami. Candramauli Swami has served Srila Prabhupada since 1973, inspiring people to become devotees within the ISKCON prison ministry in the USA, where he began visiting prisoners and holding programs in jails, along with his regularly writing letters to inmates and sending them Srila Prabhupada's books. His 30 years of dedication to welfare, growth, and sustainable rehabilitation of these prisoners has culminated in the book Holy Grail, a touching compilation of the activities of the ISKCON Prison Ministry, IPM. In 1995, he began serving as a resident sannyasi in Chicago, where he was based until 2013. When he relocated to Croatia, where he is currently serving as a spiritual leader, guiding within Europe, the USA, India, as initiating spiritual master within the ISKCON movement. Candramauli Swami has a close relationship with Gurudev, which stems from years that they spent together serving around the world. I remember my dear uncle the most at major festivals, where he was always dancing, ever present, and sharing his mercy with everyone. We are very excited today and look forward to hearing his talk on the spirit of compassionate preaching. Welcome, Candramauli Swami.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Shakti, thank you very much. My obeisances to you and to all the devotees present and those who are not present. Chaksu Unmilitam Yenatas, my Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yenabhutale Swayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Swam Padantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pucharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya Devasatarine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Iti Namine. Vanchakalpa Turubhischa Kripa Sindhupe Vacha Patitanam Bhavamebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you very much for asking me to be part of this wonderful program in glorification of someone who is not only very dear to everyone, but who made a big difference in spreading Krishna consciousness all around the world. His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. It's interesting that this is 16 years coming up in June since his departure. And usually when a person leaves, we remember him for maybe a couple years. As time goes on, the memories fade, thing we move into or whatever we're doing, we make new relationships, we get into, and it doesn't really keep in our memory so much. But it's interesting, Bhakti Tirtha Swami is simply alive in the hearts and minds of his devotees even today, after so many years of his departure, and even more so, I think, in the devotees that I've been meeting who are his disciples and who have the good fortune to have his association and his mercy, which came in so many different ways. I'm reminded of the statement by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur on the Samadhi Mandir of Srila Haridas Thakur. He reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die when thou art living, still and sound. Vaishnavas die to live, and in living is spread the holy name around. So when the Vaishnavas are here, they live by spreading the holy name around. And when they leave, they don't actually leave, they still are present in sound. And that can be taken in a couple ways. But one way that I was recalling is that each and every one of us who either disciple, associate, or acquaintance with Bhakti Tirtha Swami receive something important in that relationship that we had with him. And that may have been an instruction, a guidance, some compassionate expression of his love for the individual. It could have come in different ways, but we all can remember that and keep it dear to our heart because it's something that we keep connected with him. So, in that sense, he's still living in sound in the experience we had and in the words that he gave us. Because that was Maharaj's way of reaching people. He was very concerned that every person that he met and those that he were trying to reach had a chance to practice Krishna consciousness, who got what they needed to become fixed in their devotional service to their spiritual master and to Srila Prabhupada's mission. So his concern was very, very personal. And this was unique in Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. Whenever you were with him, he was with you. He was very much with you. He never took individual contacts or relationships as just some passing thing. He always was very much present in his concern, in his preaching, in his trying to make a difference and seeing how he could serve Prabhupada's mission by serving Prabhupada's devotees. I remember quite clearly on my personal experiences with him when he would come to Gita Nagari and he'd be traveling and then he would return to Gita Nagari. I would be in Chicago at the time, so I would take the opportunity to go and see him as soon as he arrived. For me, it was a great source of joy, again, to have his association. And he would always welcome me to come. And when I would come, we would speak many times. And one time, I remember clearly, he was meeting with devotees and different kinds of guests and people regularly. This was going on when I was there. And I was getting a little curious just to see, how how he deals with each and every person. So of course I wasn't able to always be there on the personal exchange with these individuals, but uh, I asked him one time. I said, because I knew he was helping many people with their different struggles in Krishna consciousness. So I asked him the question. I said, Maharaj, I was looking for like some kind of sutra to kind of help me understand what was his way of dealing with people, something direct. And he said, basically, I don't say so much. I just listen. Because he says, I find out most of the time, people are lonely, they're struggling, and they can't find ways or people to somehow or other help them or empathize with them or sympathize with their situation. So I'm just there for them. And I listen. I spend most of my time just listening to them. And I find, and then he concluded by saying, I find that after I do that, here's a person who cares. Here's a person who wants to make a difference in my life And therefore I can open up to him and feel happy. And it seems like, as he mentioned, he said, and when I let them do that, it seems like they don't have a problem anymore. The problem is nobody cares about them, or they couldn't find people that they could open up with, share their hearts, be honest about their struggles. But Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj inspired that simply by his nature of concern and his compassion. You might say he was there for the little guy. He was there on all levels. He could associate with anyone according to that type of association. But sometimes we find those of us who are in a position to do preaching, traveling, meeting different people, um, we're not so much there for the rank and file devotees who are just around us, but Maharaj was there for everyone. He was concerned about everyone in a genuine sense. And I saw that so many times. Of course, we have so many examples of how he helped the youth in our movement when they were struggling with the previous experiences they had had in their struggles growing up in Krishna consciousness, and how they were not really treated properly, neglected, or even to the point of becoming abused. Many times he would meet with these young people, and after meeting with them, there would be a whole different experience that they would leave feeling, wow, this person really cares about. And I was even personally there when I would see some of them, and they would express that. So that was Maharaj. He was there for the little guy and for everyone. He wanted his devotees to push us. Those of you who had his personal association or uh, are his disciples, he was always pushing us to do more, to extend ourselves in Srila Prabhupada's mission. He wanted to make a difference, and he did that himself, pushed himself more and more and more. And then there's one episode I think we're all familiar with that he expresses that to Srila Prabhupada. When Bhakti Tirtha Swami came to, I believe it was in, I think it was in London. I'm pretty sure it was London. I'm not sure exactly where the place was. But Maharaj had just come back preaching from being in the communist country. So he was preaching underground, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books through the library parties, but in a more, incognito. And Prabhupada said that anyone who preaches in these countries, I take the dust of their feet and place it on my head. Prabhupada was really wanted to bring Krishna consciousness to every sector of the society and in the world. And when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj made a concerted effort to risk his life in communist countries to spread Srila Prabhupada's message, Prabhupada was so happy. So then, Tamal Krishna Goswami was there, and he brought Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he was Ganesham at the time, to see Srila Prabhupada. And he describes it himself as he walked in. He was also accompanied by Krishna Kshetra Prabhu at the time, now he's Maharaj, and one other devotee. And Prabhupada was sitting in his desk, and Prabhupada motioned for him to come closer. And he came close, he came up to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada got up from his desk, walked around his desk, and he started rubbing the head of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and then he embraced him. And he said, your life is successful. Maharaj wanted to say something in order to not to feel like, well, yeah, I've done something wonderful. He said, actually, Srila Prabhupada, It's only because you are pushing us that we're able to do anything. And Prabhupada said, yes, yes, my spiritual master, my Guru Maharaj, he pushed me and I am pushing you. And so this is what Bhakti Tirtha Swami did. He pushed us to look deeper into ourselves and see how much more we're able to, willing to give in order to bring Krishna consciousness into the lives of others. He wanted that. And he was relentless in that type of preaching. And he showed by his own example how much he extended himself in different areas. He was tireless in his preaching, just like he mentioned just before he departed. He had gone on a world tour where he visited 35 different countries, going from country to country, preaching Krishna consciousness. He wanted to make a difference. One time I said to him, I said, Maharaj, slow down. That was the wrong thing to say. He looked at me like he didn't hear me. Like he did hear me, but it was something I shouldn't have said. But I was concerned. And he could also pick up on that. But at the same time, he said, you know, I want to use every bit of this time I have in this body to give it to Srila Prabhupada to spread Krishna consciousness as much as I can. And so that was a passing remark that I made. So that was his mood. He was tireless, and he always looked for opportunities to reach different types of people, people from different backgrounds, people from different cultures, with Prabhupada's message. And he did it so expertly. I remember when we did I think maybe some of the devotees who are up here today were there in Detroit. And just a few months after Maharaj left, it was around October 13th, I think it was, 2005. We had a beautiful ceremony in honor of Bhakti Tirtha Swami. It was only a few months after he left. And there was one person who came, and he was a local senator from one particular place in Michigan, a district representative, I'm not sure, but he was a politician. And I remember because he had come across Bhakti Tirtha Swami's books on servant leadership. And he was amazed that he could put these two words together, servant and leadership, into one phrase. How a leader is also a servant, but actually how everyone is a servant, but they serve from the position of being a leader. So of course, this personality in his political world was, you know, you're a leader. And they don't use the word servant. They use the, you know, we are in the position of leading others. So after reading Bhakti Tirtha Swami's book and getting the realization of what Maharaj was saying, he was amazed, and also it struck him very deeply how, yes, actually, that is our real understanding of our identity. We're in a position to serve, but in the position to serve from a position of leadership. And he was incredulous, describing how he came to that realization by reading Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj's books on servant leadership. So this is an example of a person. I don't think that person ever met Maharaj, but somehow or other he wound up coming to this event to celebrate the glories of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and he was eager to speak about his own experience, and which was a transformation in his way of doing his service in the world as a politician. He saw himself now no longer as a position as a leader, but one who is serving whoever he is leading. And that was one of Maharaj's uh, outstanding contributions to Krishna consciousness, to help us understand that whatever position we have in our Krishna consciousness, we can't be anything more but a servant. And that was Maharaj, and he wanted to teach us that we can serve in different ways, but still our identity as servant remains, foremost. And that was Maharaj. Um, there are so many qualities of Maharaj that he exhibited in reaching out to others. His and of course, he was very strict, although he had so much service, much responsibility, so many plans for traveling. He was very strict in his sadhana. And when I would come to Gita Nagari, every morning he would be there at the morning program. And he'd sit right practically next to Srila Prabhupada in front of Prabhupada's Vyasa, and remain sitting there and chant his rounds. He was very fixed in that. I remember one time when I came, one time he was up all night, and he had been had been responding to emails. This is another example how personal he was. I think Nanda Sunu can attest on a personal level how much he would spend time just responding to emails. And he would start sometimes in the evening time and go right through the entire night. They would have the emails printed out and have his assistant read them. And then after listening to them, he would dictate his response and the assistant would type it up and send it out. So one time when he was just finishing, and it was in the morning. I'm scheduled to give class at the temple today, but actually, since you're here, please give class. I have to chant my rounds. I have to chant my rounds. So he made it important. He's chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which we understand from our own experience and through the words of Shastra and through the example of others, that this is the foundation for our strength in Krishna consciousness. And Maharaj was an example for that, although he was an example for so many other things that he wanted to teach through his preaching, especially how to be concerned for the needs of others. And this was really, when we look at his life, we see this was a pattern throughout his own life. When he used to refer to that, he would also refer to his mother, who brought him up in that mood. And she would say to him, and when he was a young boy growing up in Cleveland in the early days, and living in quite an impoverished economic situation, and also being somewhat discriminated against because of race. Still, his mother would always say, if you have two of something, give one of them, one of these items to somebody who needs it. And he would say, sometimes I would give my clothes away, my sweaters away to others who were needy like that. And he said, I learned all that from my mother. But he followed that throughout his whole life. And we see even his early days as he was growing up, how he wanted to make a difference. He joined Martin Luther King's program in order to help raise the consciousness towards, accepting and appreciating all people from all cultures, all races, all backgrounds, wanting to get rid of the discrimination, the racism that was there so strongly in the materialistic society, which is still there today. It's always been a problem because people are still on the bodily platform. And that's where Bhakti Tirtha Swami wanted to show that, we are not this body. We are a spirit soul. And he taught that by his example. And you could see that. He never, he always was, when he would deal with you, he never put anybody on the bodily platform. He was always trying to get us off the bodily platform and dealing with the essential principles of Krishna consciousness and the importance of developing relationships. This is where he was big, the helping to develop relationship. This is one of the things I personally appreciated with Maharaj. I could always go and see him, unless he was actually busy with something that it was, I could always come and see him and talk to him anytime, and he would be available, and we would talk about so many different things that things were going on in ISKCON, the problems of the movement, or just a particular devotee that was struggling and how Maharaj was trying in different ways to make a difference in helping that devotee come to a better appreciation of Krishna consciousness. So that was Maharaj. And of course, when he left, just before he left the world, we understand how that compassion manifested itself in a very big way, where he, was willing. He was so inspired by the devotional mood of Vasudev Datta Thakur, who was a very intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who lived his life simply concerned about the suffering of others. Maharaj also imbibed that mood throughout his whole life, but now he made a declaration in a very grand way where he was willing, and this was not something that was just some kind of nice expression of his compassion. He was serious that he was willing to accept suffering so others could move forward in their spiritual life. And he made that, he wanted to, when he would talk about, or when he would even quote Vasudev Datta Thakur, you could see it was coming from his heart. But he made that declaration. I remember my god sister, very wonderful, very dear god sister, Rukmini, when she heard what Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had declared by wanting to follow in the footsteps of Vasudev Datta Thakur and making that statement to help the others grow in their spiritual life by accepting their sufferings in the form of their reactions of their material activities. She said, Maharaj, don't do that. I remember when she expressed this, and she said, don't do that. He was willing to accept the suffering for the benefit of others. And that was Maharaj. That is, the mood of the great Vaishnavas. We saw that with Srila Haridas Thakur, how he was willing to suffer in order to continue to preach to the conditioned souls, and how Srila Prabhupada also was criticized for in many reasons, and also took on so many hardships in order to bring Krishna consciousness to others. So this was Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. He had such deep and compassion and concern for those who are suffering. He wanted to make a difference. And sometimes when there was a problem within ISKCON with a particular person, the GBC or some member of the governing board, or they would come to Bhakti Tirtha Swami and say, Maharaj, can you look into this situation and see what it is, how you can help? We think you're the person who can make a difference like that. I need to take one break for a second because someone is knocking at my door and I have to let them in, but I'll be right back.
All right. All right, so just a reminder, today we have, right after this class at 8:45, we're going to transfer over to Gita Nagari, and we're going to have a wonderful Vyasa Puja and Pushpanjali. So look forward to that. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat.
Okay. Should I continue speaking?
Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
I wanted to show how Maharaj was an example to inspire everyone on different levels. And this was an experience that I was personally there. And this was, I believe the year was 1999 or the year 2000. And there was a festival at the New Vrindavan community. And devotees had come from everywhere. There was a large attendance. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj was there, Radhanath Swami was there, Lokanath Swami Maharaj was there. And so we all gathered for the first Mangal Arti. So the temple was packed. And Lokanath Swami was asked to lead the Mangal Arti. And so he began chanting the Mangal Arti prayers. And we know from our own experience that Lokanath Swami loves to chant, and he is a very powerful kirtaniya. He inspires people in so many ways in his chanting. And so Bhakti Tirtha Swami got us all moving. I remember towards the end of the Mangal Arti, when the kirtan was on to the Hare Krishna mantra, Maharaj just started to really get everyone to dance together. So we were dancing more or less in lines, going back and forth. And so, but his dancing was so, what we say, inspiring. So, well, in other words, we were watching him, not so much dancing. We were dancing and watching him at the same time. And I think Lokanath Swami also became inspired. So the kirtan started to, what we say, increase, where the conch shell blew to end the end of the arti, but that was just something that happened. The kirtan continued. And then Maharaj continued to sing, and then Bhakti Tirtha Swami continued his dancing and inspiring all of us. So that kirtan went on through Tulsi Puja time. And then, of course, we had japa period, but there was no japa period at that time because the kirtan continued. I think Lokanath Swami was really inspired by Bhakti Tirtha Swami's dancing, and Bhakti Tirtha Swami was inspired by Lokanath Swami's chanting. And we were also inspired by both of them together. So the kirtan was, and I remember we danced all over the entire room of the temple room of New Vrindavan. I think we covered every part of the area. I can remember dancing in front of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa song. And so then it went through the japa period, through Guru Puja time, through Srimad Bhagavatam class time. And then after that, it was supposed to be time for breakfast. So I think a few devotees might have left at that time. But the kirtan continued for many hours. And Maharaj didn't stop dancing. And I think I think he was giving us all energies at the same time as while he was dancing, we were all getting the energy that he was putting out. So it was a pretty amazing kirtan. I think it's one of the most memorable kirtans that I've ever been at, where It was just so enlivening. And so here's another example how Maharaj inspires people in their Krishna consciousness. He likes to inspire people to chant, to dance, to surrender, to, in other words, again, the same element. He's always pushing us to do more. Whatever we do it, do more and do better. Sometimes I'm afraid that as time goes on, we see in our society a tendency to become a little complacent, falling back on our previous experiences in Krishna consciousness, and just maybe we've lost that spirit of outreach or that spirit of taking a chance for Srila Prabhupada. But Maharaj was the ideal. By remembering his life and how he exhibited that mood of wanting to do the best in everything he did, and whatever he was doing, he put his complete heart into it. It didn't matter what it was. He did it and that's Krishna consciousness at its best. And that's what Srila Prabhupada lived to teach us, that this is all about serving the Krishna, and we should give our heart and time, energy, and devotion in whatever we do in the way that will be, inspiring for ourselves and for others. This was Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. So there's so much to his life, but these are the areas that I wanted to speak about, because we want to talk about how he was concerned about the lives of others. And I saw that on the personal level, on a larger level, for myself individually also. He told me many things about myself that I wasn't even aware of. I would ask him, Maharaj, what do you think? What do I need to do to improve? And he would say. I remember we did a little exercise in Chicago Temple when he came, and he had given class. And then at the end, he said, now we want to do a little exercise. We pair off in twos, find a partner, and then you say to that partner, what is it about me that I can improve on? So somebody would have to tell you what you need to do. Of course, it was hard for some of us. Most of us found it, we kind of hesitated, like, well, I have to find some fault in somebody, but it wasn't fault finding. It was a way to inspire devotees to move forward in a what we say, a setting that was organized. A lot of times we do that in the wrong mood at the wrong time. And when we did it, it was nice. Yeah, it was nice. We can learn something about ourselves. We also learn something about how to improve our relationship with others. So these are some, of course, there are so many stories. Oh, it's very sweet, sweet stories of Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj about his preaching in Africa, his preaching in Gita Nagari, his preaching in the area where I am in Croatia, Croatia, Slovenia area. And he did a lot of preaching here. He made many disciples here. But one thing I remember, and his books, how it made an impact on many people. One time I went to the temple in Soho Street, Sri Sri Radhalandanishwar, and I had given class. And then I was being driven by one devotee back to the area of Bhaktivedanta Manor. So we had to drive across town. So this devotee was telling me, I didn't know him so well, But he said there was one devotee who was coming to the temple and he was struggling. And after some time, he gave up and decided not to come anymore or even practice Krishna consciousness. So he said, then he came across, I think he was this driver was instrumental in helping this devotee get one of Maharaj's books, and it was Spiritual Warrior 2, Turning Lust into Love. And so he read the book, gave it to Deb, and he said, after he read that book, he said, this is what I've been looking for. He came back and then he started chanting again and practicing again. But simply by reading Maharaj's books, which were able to talk to people on a level which they could understand. Like personally, I have an opportunity to preach in prisons, and we find that Bhakti Tirtha Swami's books are really a message that the inmates can understand. So this is one of the ways we use Bhakti Tirtha Swami's books to reach people who are in prison. And he, again, Maharaj talked a lot to people who are struggling with the lower modes of material energy and how to, find that solution. So I think the point we want to make is that Maharaj was compassion personified. Compassion personified. But it wasn't sentimental. It was always based on genuine concern and on Srila Prabhupada's philosophy. It was based on the principle of the soul's relationship to Krishna. There are people who are compassionate, but their compassion is misplaced. And it's when they try to help somebody, they do some harm at the same time because they can't understand the bigger picture that we are not this body. We are, eternally Krishna's servant. And compassion for the soul, but also compassion for the needs of our material life, to blend those two together to make a more of a rounded attempt in our practice of Krishna consciousness. That was Maharaj. So we definitely feel a great loss in his disappearance. And it's amazing, I can say that again, that after 16 years of since his departed, he's still with us very much, at least for in my life, the memories I have with him and the experiences that came about with those memories that helped me to understand deeper how to practice Krishna consciousness. So these are just a few of the things that are coming to my mind at the particular time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for an enlivening class and describing the spirit of Gurudev in terms of compassionate preaching and just reminding us of the importance of strict sadhana, and also being personal with devotees and how he would always push us to do better. All right, so if you have questions, please put in the chat. So far, the first question will be, how do we imbibe this mood of deep compassion for everyone and this fierce mood of service in our lives?
The very last part of the question didn't come through. How do we imbibe the spirit of compassion? And what was the last part?
Yes, for everyone and this fierce mood of service in our lives.
Well, it's not something that you can just do. It comes with association with people who are like that. By associating with people who have these qualities, these where we can view them and then also experience them in our own life. That is one of the ways where we can get an understanding what it means to live according to these principles. The association of great souls is really the foundation for everything we want to develop in our Krishna consciousness, along with remaining strict in our own spiritual practice, particularly in chanting our rounds. I emphasize that as my main form of preaching. I inspire devotees to try to make chanting the rounds early and complete. In other words, chant your 16 rounds as early as you can as a foundation. Don't do anything during those early morning hours but chant. And Maharaj did that too. I saw that with him whenever I was with him in Gita Nagari especially, and in other places. So good sadhana, especially chanting, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, especially Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing about these activities which are of that nature you want to develop. If you want to develop that a particular nature, then hear about those pastimes that relate to those particular that nature you want to develop. So when we hear about Bhakti Tirtha Swami and how he exhibited those qualities, we also get inspired, just like the person who asked that question. So now the next step is to find that association where that inspiration will become stronger and take hold and then start to actually manifest in our own life.
All right, thank you so much. Next question. What's the main point of focus would you advise to a 14-year-old girl in a karmic school to adopt the mood of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami from Thakurani? So from an early age.
For a young girl in a school, and the question is that she wants to develop that mood of Bhakti Tirtha Swami?
Yes, so basically being in a karmi school, how would, what kind of suggestions and advice would you give to her?
Don't be afraid of who you are. Sometimes we're afraid to come out as devotees in this society of non-devotees, but we should always be proud of the fact that we have received the mercy and that we are a devotee. And not that we think we're better than anybody. That's the wrong move, but we've been given something. So now in the association of people who don't have it, we can use our the mercy that's given to us to speak to others or to just to follow strictly what we've been given. Just like a lot of times when people are in that arena, they find themselves influenced by the association that they're in and sometimes compromise their own values, compromise their own principles, but we shouldn't do that. And that'll make us stronger in our own and also inspire other people to inquire more about what we believe in and how, because they can see there's something, when you have spiritual values, then your character is attractive. It's attractive even to the non-devotees. For some non-devotees, it may be intimidating, but for others, it's attractive. We should be proud that we have been given the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Tirtha Swami. And proud in the sense that, I'm fortunate and I want to make other people fortunate.
Thank you so much. Could you please share or give examples to develop ways of becoming bold in our everyday life and executing Krishna consciousness?
Bold. Well, Prabhupada would say, uh, take a chance for Krishna. See what you can do that it's in line with Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's teachings. For instance, distribute books. Like now during this epidemic pandemic, just like for instance, just yesterday, the devotees here went out on Sankirtan. Well, I'm in Slovenia, right near the temple, and we go out on Harinam Sankirtan regularly. Sometimes 4 or 5 devotees, sometimes 10, sometimes more. But there's always one devotee who distributes books. The devotees went out with 4 devotees, just cartels, mridanga, 4 devotees, and one devotee distributing books. And in 1 hour, he distributed 16 books, which is pretty good. And because now there's I guess you might say, people are in society are kind of like saying, where is this situation going? How they're realizing that it's affecting their life, and they're questioning a lot of things. So now people are more open to what we have to offer than ever before, I think. And yeah, and our Harinams, I've been going out with the devotees on the Harinams, and people are joining in the Harinams. They're dancing, they're singing with us. Sometimes they're, just waving. But yeah, so go out. Don't stay inside all the time. Go out and connect with some other devotees, do kirtan, distribute books, or find ways to meet the conditioned souls. And you should know one thing, because you're doing the mission of Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya. There's an empowerment that comes with that. So it's not that we're just taking a chance. We're supported by, the Lord and by the great souls.
Jai, definitely. Okay, I have another question here. How do I stop grieving while thinking of Srila Gurudev?
Well, grieving is good. It's good, but not that we spend too much time in that and forget about what we're supposed to be doing. Uh, we all feel the loss, but I think what we should focus on is that what he gave us and what he taught us, those are the things that we should focus on when we think of him, rather than to feel. Of course, we feel that loss, that grieving is there, but it's not that we stay in that mood, because it makes it hard for us to move forward. We should think, well, okay, what would please Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, rather than, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Maharaj. So I have another question. Okay, so someone wrote, I was so inspired by Bhakti Tirtha Swami's desire to create an alternative to the mainstream at Gita Nagari Dham. He wanted to give people simple living and have a health retreat center. How can we take his inspiration to be healthy in mind, in body, in spite of the mainstream COVID narrative?
Well, all the instructions are there. Um, as Prabhupada said, the material world is a contaminating place, and we do have to be cautious not to be affected. And so personal care is required. But along with that, strong sadhana will empower one, or what we might say, protect one against the effects of this. Because by chanting the holy names of the Lord, we get the shelter of the Lord. And that's a protection that works not only on the spiritual level, but also on all levels. If we're chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and staying fixed in our chanting, we're also less likely to get affected by, unless we're careless in our day-to-day activities. And then that's, of course, we shouldn't be. We're never like that anyway. Even if we don't have an epidemic or something like this going on, we're always careful to take care of ourselves. And we should be always doing that. But at the same time, the shelter of the holy name, the shelter of the association of the devotees is the thing that'll protect us. And one thing we should not be is don't be fearful. Fear causes us to get confused. One of the elements that goes on into this particular media broadcast of this is it creates fear in the minds of people. And fear, as Prabhupada said, leads to confusion. And when you're confused, you don't know what to do or what not to do. So uh, we should be cautious, but not fearful. And knowing that Krishna is there and taking his shelter and acting properly. But don't be fearful, because fear affects the mind and then it ultimately affects the body too. Krishna's there. Rake Krishna More Krishna Rake.
Definitely. Excellent points. Right. So even though His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami is a highly empowered preacher, His Holiness was often misunderstood and criticized for his innovative ways. How can we remain steadfast even though we're being criticized and rejected?
Rejected too. Well, if we're following in the footsteps of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, then we're fine. Yeah, there were people who didn't understand, or what we might say misunderstood his mood. Um, of course, he even told me directly when I was with him towards the last few months that he had to go outside of the norm in order to reach different types of people by becoming a little bit like them in terms of understanding what they lived for and how they practiced that. So he did that in order to be able to relate to them and then introduce Krishna consciousness from that perspective. And so he was, and people will misunderstand. They'll say, well, he likes that. He likes that. They'll put it in the category that he's just interested in these things. But he told me personally, he said, I had to do that. And in order for me to reach, various types of groups that not normally. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the same thing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas in order to reach the Mayavadi sannyasis, to convert them to Krishna consciousness. He told Lord Nityananda, who was an Avaduta, take on a wife, become a grihasta. That way you can preach in that category. So, the Lord is always inspiring his devotees to reach out to different types of people. We don't have to become like them, and we should not become like them, but we should be able to somehow or other find ways to, just like when Maharaj he was holding classes at the Pentagon for leaders in government at the time, and many army officers and people who are in the military were coming to his classes like that. So he wanted to get into different sides, and so he was misunderstood like that, and he was criticized like that. And he would talk to me about that sometimes, and sometimes he would feel very sad that people didn't understand what he was trying to do. And a lot of times they wouldn't even take the time to talk to him and find out more. They would just speak something from a distance. And that's the most uninformative way to get knowledge. It's just to try to see and understand someone without knowing them, without speaking to them. And that seems to be a convenient way, but it's actually a way that's never correct. Yeah, he was misunderstood a lot.
All right. We have a comment in the chat saying, thank you so much, Maharaj, for inspiring us. We are all indebted to you for carrying on Guru Maharaj's legacy. And someone also asked about the 3 Ps. Can you remind us of what they are again and how they are very important for chanting?
3 Ps: posture, pronunciation, prayer. So when you begin your chanting in the morning, align these 3 in order. First, find that posture which is conducive. We hear many times people with Prabhupada's lectures, he would say, sit properly. So sitting with back straight, if you choose to sit in a chair, fine, but keep your back straight and keep your posture upright. And that way it's easier to become attentive. Initially, it seems a little awkward, but once you get into it and you find attention is increased. Pronunciation, this is a problem with a lot of devotees. Sometimes we chant too fast or too hurriedly, and we don't pronounce the words clearly. We should always be conscious of how we're pronouncing the sound clearly, distinctly, because it becomes hard to hear nicely if the words are not being pronounced right. When we pronounce the name clearly, hearing becomes more stronger and more regular. So, and then the last one is prayer. After aligning these 2, then start to offer the chanting as a mood of prayer to Krishna. Chant from the heart, or we can say chant in the mood of calling out to Krishna, praying for his mercy. It's a mood you adopt. It's a mood. 3 Ps: posture, pronunciation, and prayer.
Thank you.
So practice.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4th P is practice.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for starting us off on our first global summit. This has been amazing. This is a wonderful way to start the day. We are now going to transfer over to Gita Nagari, and we are going to take part in Pushpanjali and Puja. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Prabhupada ki jai. Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Candramauli Swami ki jai. Yeah.
We're just starting. You got a double dose today, bro.
Let me take that screen.
I'll take this.
Show the devotees the pizza. Nice try. Mother, you showed her. Come, show the pizza. The offering. Pizza offering. Look at the beautiful cake. Mother Jumbo, by Mother Jambawati. Preparing for whisking all the offerings. Spaghetti. Decorations prepared by the youth. Offering up the garland. Beautiful garland made by Tommy's family. Yeah. Much love and care. Have the devotees for the spiritual master. So you want to apologize? Remember how much Gurudev used to love us hustling around, engaged in service. He said, if you weren't hustling and running around, you were Maya.
And we will return shortly as soon as possible with Gita Nagari. Right now, we are in the middle of doing Pushpanjali. So hopefully the connection will return shortly. So right now we just got a beautiful tour of Gita Nagari and an ecstatic kirtan going on, bringing us all into the mood of Gurudev and his wonderful disciples and well-wishers, the Hari Chakran family, Bali Maharaj, you know, Chuta narrating, Devaki Nandana, and just so ecstatic, just so ecstatic. Devaki and sister, and just everyone coming together to serve nicely Gurudev. So we are very, very excited about being able, when will we actually have this time to be able to unite like this? You know, if this were normal times, I don't think we would be doing this in the same way, you know? So this is a very auspicious time. And yesterday we were so fortunate. You know, this whole weekend has been full of nectar. You know, we've been able to travel together, you know, from the comfort of our living rooms or wherever we're situated, and literally enter other people's houses and go to Gurudev's, you know, home, go to his actual place where he set up the Institute in DC, you know, and just share these precious moments, getting a guided virtual tour, you know. It's amazing, amazing. Yes, yes, with the snacks. Oh, definitely, definitely. So we are very, very fortunate. And I'm hoping within a couple minutes, we will be able to return to Gita Nagari.
Haribo, Krishna Shakti. Okay, she's trying to get back with us. She's doing it on an iPhone. So that's the reason why we're having like a little bit of a disconnect.
Okay.
She's doing her best to get back with us as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm just in contact with the temple now, Parijapta. She's going to try to make sure we get back on. Thanks, Peru.
Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Namaste. Krishna Padaya. Prabhupada. Bhakti Tirtha Pushpanjali. Bhakti Tirtha Swami Shri Krishna Padaya.
Jai Gurudev. Offering on behalf of everyone. Jai.
All right, we're currently in the middle of offering Gurudev prayers, and we're hoping that the connection will continue. This is really a beautiful program. Let's give thanks to Mother Achyuta, Mother Rajalila, and all the devotees in Gita Nagari that have put together this beautiful ceremony and beautiful festival to share with us internationally around the world. This is really auspicious, and I'm very grateful that we're able to actually partake in this opportunity and activity and collectively together. So definitely. All right, so in the last couple of days, we have had an amazing day. We started off Friday with a wonderful Nishringa Yagya, and then we were able to watch different offerings and hear about Gurudev's life from family and friends and well-wishers that he grew up with, literally, which is very ecstatic, you know, to hear from his sister and niece and just different family members. How often do we actually get the chance to do this? I know we had a Cleveland festival where we were actually able to do this, you know, physically, but the fact that we're actually able to do this collectively together is amazing. And so Mother Shri Upanishad moderated a beautiful session where we were all able to go see where Gurudev took birth and how his upbringing began. And from there, yesterday, we were able to take a 20-country virtual tour to visit the different flavors, different styles, in different ways that Gurudev impacted lives of devotees around the world. So literally, we started off in Australia, went to Europe. Oh, such a beautiful offering from former Yugoslavian devotees. Amazing. Very ecstatic and sweet. You guys made some of us cry over here. And from there, we continued and went to Africa and different countries, and we're able to see the different flavors, and you know, from Anglophone speaking to French speaking, Francophone countries, and then moved on down to South Africa. And then we were able to go back to Ghana and get a beautiful kirtan that Srivas spontaneously allowed us to partake in. And from there, we continued and went on to Russia, where we learned about our God family, who now are still continuing to work on the front lines and share Gurudev's mercy with devotees in Ukraine, or with people in Ukraine. So hearing about these beautiful programs that are taking place, we're going to hear more later on today. And then from there, we moved to Gita Nagari, where we were able to get a personal guided tour by Mother Rajalila and Ekavira. And then from there, and it's so intimate, you know, I really felt like I had a nice darshan with Gurudev, you know, going to his personal space. And, you know, then also returning to DC and being able to get a guided tour, you know, amazing. Madhavacharya and Mother Kunti did such a beautiful job, and all the devotees in DC as well that put together beautiful videos, so heart-touching. Very, very nice. And then also seeing Gurudev's Pushpa Samadhi in Gita Nagari, just amazing. So very, very, very thankful. And so today what we have lined up today is our first inaugural Global Summit. So we had a beautiful class from Candramauli Swami talking about the spirit of compassion. And currently we just had a beautiful Pushpanjali ceremony and festival. We'll see, we'll give it a minute or two to see whether or not we're going to be able to reconnect.
I think they started back in Lila's class.